Welcome to Accounting in Focus. This video is an introduction to managerial accounting. Now, if you've taken financial accounting and now you're in managerial accounting, um, managerial accounting is a much different class. It is, if you didn't like financial, you might like managerial because this isn't really the accounting class for accountants. This is the accounting class for managers and for accountants that want to do um, corporate accounting. This class is going to focus on much different things than financial accounting did. So, if you're dreading, oh no, I'm taking another accounting class, you might just like this one because a lot of my students who didn't like financial actually really liked managerial. So, let's do a little bit of overview on what accounting is. So, accounting is a system of identifying, recording, and communicating monetary information. And there are two types of accounting. You've probably taken financial accounting, either last semester or maybe last year, and there's managerial accounting. Let's review financial accounting a little bit. Financial accounting, remember, it focuses on external users. So this is really your accounting for shareholders, for the government, for creditors. It focuses on past activity. So after something's happened, we're actually recording it. Um, there's a huge emphasis on precision. So we want the numbers to be as exact as possible. Remember the term materiality. We're looking to make sure that errors are not material, which means they're not large enough to make someone make a different decision because of that error. It has a focus on company-wide reports. Remember, there are four reports that are done in financial accounting: the balance sheet, the income statement, the statement of retained earnings, and the statement of cash flow. Now, we're going to use some of these statements a little bit in this class, but the focus is going to be on different reports than we used in financial accounting. Financial accounting, remember, there were lots of rules. You probably talked about generally accepted accounting principles. You may have talked about IFRS, which is International Financial Reporting Standards. So these two groups, these two sets of rules really tell us what should be on a balance sheet, what should be on an income statement, how do you record revenue. So, in summary, the focus is on financial reporting information in a prescribed format, either through GAAP or through IFRS, on the financial statements for a certain group of users, and these are external users. Okay, managerial accounting is much different. The focus is on internal users. So you're talking about this is managers, employees. We're not talking, this is not for shareholders. This is not for your board of directors. This is not for creditors. So you're going to see much different information that we're using in this course than we would in financial accounting. Here, the emphasis is on the future. We are working with planning. The Most of us, when we think of planning in accounting, we're thinking of budgeting. Okay, so we're making a plan for the future. What are our sales going to look like? How many units of our product do we need to make? What are we going to spend on marketing and advertising and secretaries and utilities? So we're putting together a financial plan on paper for what we're going to do in the future. We also do controlling. Let me get back to controlling. Let me talk about decision making first. Decision making, right? We do this every day. Am I going to buy a car? Where am I going to go to college? Should I take out student loans? And in order to do that, you need financial information, right? How long is it going to take for me to pay off those loans? What's my rate of return if I go to a small state school versus a private school? These are the kind of decisions that we make as individuals. On a business side, businesses are looking to see, should we expand? Should we outsource? Um, should we move into a new product line? Should we release a new product? And all of these have financial implications. So that's where you see a lot of difference in the numbers that we use in managerial accounting versus what we do in financial. We might use some of that historic information in order to base our budget on or our financial decisions, but we're planning out into the future. Now, controlling is interesting because controlling is making sure that your plan or your decision went the way you expected it to. So, controlling is kind of the checkup after the fact. If you put together a budget, you want to make sure that that budget you came in under budget, right? Or that your revenue was higher or your expenses were lower, but you want to compare your actual results to your budget. When you're talking about decision making, you want to make sure that that decision made sense. So if you decided to outsource your product, um, are you saving the money you thought you were going to make? Are your customers happy, that their product is being made wherever it's being made? So you have to make sure that you back after the fact. If you don't do that controlling piece, there's really no point in doing a budget, right? Because if you make a budget and put it in a drawer and never look at it again, why did you spend all the time and effort to make a budget? In managerial accounting, there's an emphasis on relevance and timeliness. Okay, so in financial accounting, we were concerned with making sure that the numbers were absolutely correct all the time. And in managerial accounting, we need to make sure that the information that we have is relevant to the decision that we're making or the plan we're putting together, and can we get the numbers quickly? Usually, if you have to make a decision, you don't have years to make that decision. You need to make it in a short amount of time. We also have a focus on segment reporting. Okay, so we're not necessarily looking at the company as a whole. We're going to break the company into pieces and look at those individual pieces. There are also no national or international rules. The way that I think of managerial accounting is it's very similar to programming on the web. Okay. I'm sure that you've seen lots of websites and they all look very different. Some of them have frames, although that's pretty passe. We don't see a lot of frames anymore um, because people didn't like them. But there's no standard format that said all websites need to look like this, right? They're just best practices. Some websites have Facebook buttons and some don't. Some will let you share to Twitter and some don't. But there are no hard and fast rules of what a website needs to look like. So there are no national or international rules. There are just best practices. And so what we teach in managerial accounting is we teach you those best practices. How do you calculate the cost of a product? How do you format your income statement so it has really useful information that will help you make decisions? So, since we're talking about managerial accounting, I wanted to talk a little bit about managers, okay, and the skills that managers need to succeed. And this is really good for you as a student because you need to start thinking like a manager and you need to make sure that you have the skills that are going to get you a good job when you graduate. So, one thing that we're looking for as employers is we're looking for strategic management skills. We need students that can think critically about situations and develop strategies to grow the business. Because that's really why we're hiring you as a manager is we want your help growing our business. So you need to be able to think strategically about product improvement. How do we make our product better? You need to have customer knowledge. So if you sell your product to a particular demographic, you need to understand that demographic so you know what they want. And then you need to be focused on operational excellence. How can I improve the way that we make or sell our product in a way that will make our customers happy? The risk management is something that most new managers really don't focus on. Every decision you make has risk. If you release a new product and nobody buys it, then that brings risk to your company because your company probably spent a ton of money to make this product and bring it out to market. And if the product fails, then the company ends up losing money. So managers need to be able to assess risk associated with a decision and analyze those risks and then choose the proper course of action. Managers also need process management skills. Okay, so we're looking to continuously improve the business process. How do we make the business more productive? Okay, we're looking at enhancing the value chain to increase customer willingness to purchase our product. Okay, and we'll look at the value chain in a second. Okay, and actually here it is. Here's the value chain. So most major businesses have this chain that will bring a product to market. So in order to bring a successful product to market, all of these things need to work together in harmony. So the first one is research and development. You have to be able to develop a product that people want in a way that people want it. You know, one of the most successful research and development items that I've ever seen is Apple. For years, Apple just seemed to know what people wanted. So, you know, the iPhone, the iPad, you know, Microsoft and Dell had tried to sell tablets before the iPad, and none of them were successful. And Apple found a way to build a product that nobody had wanted before and get them to look at it and go, wow, I really want this. Another thing is product design. So you have to design your product in such a way that it looks appealing, it's functional. You know, the thing that I always love, you know, looking over my desk over here, I have those clicky pencils. You know, I love the clicky pencils, and I like the ones that have the little grip on them. And, you know, that product design is great because, you know, for me, having that little grip is easier on my hand, you know, to write with. So, you know, just one little design thing, and, but, you know, it makes me happy. You have to be able to have flawless manufacturing. So, manufacture your product in such a way that it's going to be ready when you need it. I know I was looking at numbers on the Xbox One, and there was actually a story online that said that the Xbox One is pretty much sold out for pre-order. They had very limited quantities left. So I'm hoping that, you know, Microsoft gets their act together and produces more Xbox Ones because people want them. You have to have a great marketing plan. You know, I remember, you know, I'm kind of a video game person. So I remember when the Wii came out, and remember they had, you know, the two guys would walk up to the door and say, "We want to play," and you know, you'd see grandma, you know, swinging the controller, you know, and playing tennis with their grandchildren. You know, I thought that that was a brilliant marketing campaign because it showed the entire family playing together. So you had lots of different demographics that appealed to. You had a lot of grandparents that wanted to buy those systems so they could play with their kids. You had nursing homes that were buying them. You know, families wanted to get them, you know, so everybody could play together. It was just a brilliant marketing campaign. You need to have a good distribution channel. I think you know, one of the companies that has probably the best distribution channel in the country is Amazon. They are able to get products to people very, very quickly. Um, and so if you can't get your product to your customer, then you can't sell it. And then the last one is customer service. Um, this one's actually, you know, this one's actually amusing to me because I remember when companies first started outsourcing, um, especially tech companies, they were outsourcing their technical support to customers. And Dell was one of the first companies that did this. And in the business community, I remember a lot of my clients did not want to work with Dell because they knew if they worked with Dell that they were calling overseas. There were a lot of issues with communication, you know, and getting help when you needed tech support. And that actually drove a number of computer companies to bring their tech support back to the United States because of those issues. So, you know, and you can have that, you know, with whenever you have two people, you know, of any nationality speaking to each other, if there are accents involved, you know, there's sometimes a communication barrier and even a language barrier. So, you know, you have to make sure that you've got good customer service um, in place, or else, you know, if your customers find out you don't have good customer service, they may not buy your product because they may have to encounter your customer service people at some point. So, A really important thing to know when you're working in managerial accounting and in business in general is the theory of constraints. The theory of constraints tells us that resources are not unlimited. Okay, we have limited resources, and so how do we allocate those limited resources in such a way that we can provide our service efficiently? So if you look at this chart, this is from the UK magazine Health Management, and this diagram appeared in February of 1999. And this is on processing surgery patients. So if you think about all the steps involved in getting a patient through surgery. Okay, so typically there is a referral from the general practitioner, then they make an appointment. There is an outpatient visit, so like you have a consultation with the doctor. Then somebody has to add you to the surgery waiting list. Then you actually have surgery. Then there's a follow up visit afterwards, and then you're discharged. So if you look at this, okay, we have a constraint here, and the constraint is surgery. Okay. So we can process 100 patient, 100 referrals, 100 appointments. You can do 50 outpatient visits a day. We can add 150 patients to the waiting list, thank goodness, because we can only do 50 surgeries a day. That's it. Only 15 surgeries a day. So then we can do 60 patient visits and we could discharge 140 patients. This is my bottleneck. This is my constraint right here, the surgery. This is where things are getting messed up. Because if you think about it, at a minimum, okay, if we say the outpatient visits, okay, are my minimum, that means we've got at least 15 patients a day that we can't, at least 35 patients a day that we can't serve. So this way, good thing that we can add this many patients per day because, that list is going to be building up and we need people to manage it. So what are some options? How do we eliminate this bottleneck and use our resources more efficiently? Some students in my classes, when I ask them this question, they've told me, well, you know, is it the hospital? Is it because we don't have enough operating rooms? Well, maybe we need more operating rooms. Well, maybe the issue is doctors. We need more doctors. Or maybe it's that, we need more nurses to actually be in surgery, so maybe we need more nurses. Um, well, what if you can't do those things? What if you can't expand the hospital? What if there aren't any more doctors? What do you do? Well, I would argue that there are probably wasted resources here. I mean, if we can process 100 patients, 100 patients, 50 patients, 150 patients, I think especially here in this one, we have too many resources. I mean, even if you look at, okay, we've got 100 and 100, 50 and then 150. This is at least 50 people, our capacity is at least 50 people too high. So maybe what we need to do is we need to look at to reallocate some of these people into other positions. I know we can't make them surgeons, right? But, maybe what we have to do is cut back on the surgery waiting list personnel, the appointments made, free up some money, and then maybe we can afford to hire more surgeons or put in more space. Maybe we should reallocate because, I mean, outpatient visits, you're usually meeting with the doctor, right? You're meeting with the surgeon. Maybe we need to decrease this number so that we can get those doctors into surgery more often. Okay, so, and that's like the critical thinking, right? You kind of have to pull this apart and say, okay, where do we have too many people? Where do we have not enough people? And can we create some kind of balance? And it may be that it's not feasible to add more surgeons. Well, if that's the case, then, how can we save money in earlier parts of the pipeline so that we can be more profitable? Okay, so back to skills. Here's where managerial accounting comes in. You need to have measurement skills. And I'm not talking about measuring on a ruler. What I'm talking about is I'm talking about the ability to measure quantity. Okay, so how much does it cost to make our product? What do we need to know in order to be able to do this? This is not just about being able to calculate numbers. Okay, managerial accounting, the only skills you really need are addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, this is not complex mathematics, but you need to be able to understand what information you need and then calculate the desired result. Um, and the biggest piece of this is on the compilation of data. If you don't know what data you need, then you can never calculate. Okay. So managerial accounting, we focus a lot on improving your analysis skills and your critical thinking skills. Managers also need leadership skills. This is very important. And I think a lot of managers, they forget about this. You need to be able to motivate people. Because if you can't motivate people to make themselves better, you can't get promoted. I mean, really think about this for a second. If I can't train my replacement, how am I going to move up the ladder? So you have to be able to motivate people to want to succeed. Okay, 6 skills for success. Okay, so these are basic skills that all managers need to have in order to be successful. You need to be technically competent. And I'm not talking about computers here unless you work in the field, unless you work in the field of technology. You need to be technically competent in whatever your field is. So, for example, if you do want to be an accountant, then you need to understand how accounting works, both financial and managerial. If you're an operations manager, you need to understand how operations work, what are best practices, what are other companies doing, and you need, no matter what field you go into, you're always learning. Just because you graduate from college and you get your BA or your BS doesn't mean that learning stops. Okay? You're always trying to improve yourself. You need to have integrity. You need to make sure that you're straight with people, that you're being ethical, and that you're treating people the way you would want to be treated. You need to be able to implement organizational change. If you have really good ideas but you can't get anybody to come along with you, then you're not going to be a very effective manager. You need to have great communication skills. So you need to be able to speak well. You need to be able to write well. You need to know how to write a memo, okay, or write a report to communicate information. With that, you need to know how to use Word, you need to know how to use Excel, you need to know how to use PowerPoint. And it's not just how to use it, but how to use it effectively. You need to know how to write an effective email. Sometimes that's one of the things that, I see student emails and I kind of cringe and, makes me want to do a whole lecture on how to, write effective emails. Because that's key. The thing that you've got to remember when you're communicating with people, especially managers, I probably get 400 emails a day. And so, I skim my emails to kind of see, okay, what's important. And if you write me a 4-page email, I'm probably not going to get to the end of it because I've got other stuff I need to read. So you have to make sure that you can sell your argument very succinctly. You need, again, we kind of talked about this before, you need the ability to motivate and mentor other people, um, because you want to train the people who are going to be in your job so you can move up the ladder. And you can't be afraid to improve the people around you because you're worried, hey, they'll take my job and then I'll get laid off. Because you have to be looking to improve the people around you and motivate them, or else you're not being an effective manager and you may end up losing your job. And more companies are moving to team based decision making, which means that as a manager, you're not making the team by yourself, or you're not making a decision by yourself. A team is making that decision with you. So you have to make sure that you can manage a team so that they can work together to make decisions.